to each other, if you exchange with each other, if you have diversity with each other, you can build relationships. And if you exit, you're alone. If you permit exchange, you prosper, you grow, you have harmony, and most important, as he says, you have peace and no arms. So now, with this brilliant discourse about England and Ireland, we come back to family law. And I would think that there could be no better person than the Emperor of International Family Law, the Right Honorable Justice Matthew Thorpe, to talk about what judicial license can do, what exchange of lawyers can do, and what they can produce. Over to Lord Justice Matthew Thorpe. Sir.
I have a certainty that I will disappoint Anil. So let me give you one memory which is relevant to this evening's proceedings. Early in 1980, I was a silk specialising in family law. A London solicitor called Peter Gross Hodge had a mission to persuade the London Bar to support something called the International Association of Matrimonial Lawyers. It was a purely American institution, and a number of successful American family lawyers used this institution to organize expensive tours to desirable foreign places where they could indulge themselves. They could erect a sort of scholarly program which was never implemented, but it was there for the benefit of the tax inspector. And we in London were a little shocked at the idea that we should participate in such naked tax evasion. Well, of course, the pressure not to get left out meant that we all signed up. And what I want to emphasize is that 40 years later, what started as a tax dodge is now a really important international organization, the International Association of Family Lawyers. And William Longrig, who was here until maybe 20 minutes ago, has been one of the main architects of its evolution to what it now is, a teaching body, a leading body, a prize-giving body with a real international importance. So I'm saying to Abel, if you want an example, if you want an inspiration, there it is. And all that is long, long ago, but more recently in my judicial life, I was lucky enough to be there at the birth of a new concept of judicial activism, which was actually originated by a New Zealand judge. And we used this concept to partner with the Hague Conference the development of a network of international judges, all specializing in family work and all with the power to make things happen in their own jurisdictions. And it has been a slow growth from maybe 4 or 5 common law jurisdictions that embrace the concept to now almost 80% of the jurisdictions that operate the 1980 convention, they are supporting the network. So there's no doubt about it that if you want to bring justice to ordinary people, justice that is delivered swiftly, justice that is delivered at proportionate costs, you've got to have cooperation, communication, collaboration. And I'm sure that this new beginning will be fostering just those principles. And I wish you all so well.
Thank you so much.
In order to thank Lord Justice Thorpe, I would be failing in my duty if I sit down and thank him. So I stand before you as a pupil of Lord Justice Thorpe, who has taught us so many things in real life. And the words which he just used are our motto, are our preamble. And we are only going to be a country cousin of IAFL. Where have we learned this? Aina and I have learned to do what IAFL is doing because we are IAFL fellows. And we are only going to do a bit more in a smaller way, in a smaller jurisdiction, to add to, IAFL is a very big organization. It looks after the entire world. Let us see what we can do in London in a limited way to help those who cannot reach IAFL lawyers who may be expensive. That's a very honest statement. Yeah? So we will be available to people pro bono, we will be available to people at lower costs, and we will be accessible to share our experience, to share our knowledge, and to share our professional acumen so that families can get together. And believe you me, you do one pro bono, the Almighty gives you 5 paid cases. It's a divine payback. I don't know how it happens. So this is something which, and it gives you a lot of satisfaction. It gives you a lot of happiness. I often talk to my wife about my cases because she's the only one who listens to me. My children are in England. So I invite her into my office, make her sit in my chair, and I sit where the client sits, and I narrate the case to her and say, what is going to be the solution? She says, let's have dinner.
Good answer.
So now we move to the scholar of family, the man who came from Germany and was a scholar in Sanskrit, did not know ABC of law, but started teaching law and society in South Asia, right with me in 1984. And now, if you read his books, they actually take you back to what Hindu law really meant. And then I will be now stepping out because I actually cannot say what all he can say. So over to Dr. Metzger.
Before you say anything, can I also say who was inspiration for my Islamic family law specialism? Werner Minsky is author of the textbook, the Bible we call it, called Muslim Family Law, Pearl and Minsky, Blue Book. And that is a book that inspired me when I was learning at almost my father's knee, when he was teaching me Sharia family law specialism, that this gentleman that came from nowhere for us, we didn't understand why he wrote this book. We just found it in the library and were blown away by it, because the difference with Werner is he took all the noise and he distilled the essence, and that's what we need in law. So I want to say thank you personally for an inspiration like that. Thank you.
That honor is called civil law.
Please.
Thank you, Anna. My God, I need to change my speech. See that. But first of all, let me say how very honored I am to be here, of course, but also how much I appreciate what you're doing. So you have all my blessings. I can say this in one word. Yeah, it is absolutely, you know, a multiple, very diverse contribution you're going to make. And you just expounded on this in terms of pro bono work as well, combining pro bono work and paid work. That has been my practice too, and my experience too. Yeah, that you know you do something, and over the years I've done so many expert reports. Let me give you all my blessings, and I really see this as a flagship project in private international law. But yesterday we had this book launch on public international law. It's clear that there are overlaps, there are combinations between these two. We shouldn't just focus on family law, on those issues. You are working in a broader context, and I've always tried to maintain awareness of this broader context. And if you are now saying, right, we want to focus on India, we want to specialize on this particular really important jurisdiction, 1.5 billion, I mean, not 1.3, 1.5 billion people. India is now the largest country in the world in terms of demography. Yeah? And it's seriously underrated, undervalued. I've suffered so much abuse for being, you know, an expert on India. Nobody wants to know. Like, they're not important, you know, they're primitive people, yeah? They're junkies. Yeah? And so it's something that is giving a signal as well that India has arrived in this scenario, and India has been doing so many things that are simply not known, and I've worked all my life on making these things known. So when you, let me answer that first. If you wonder why I wrote this Muslim law book, well, I was appointed at SOAS to teach Hindu law, but because I did this by apprenticeship, I sort of studied for a year at SOAS, knowing that the year after I would have to teach those courses myself. And what Professor Duet did in that year, he taught law and society in South Asia, but the word Muslim was never mentioned. And I was sort of sitting there and thinking, hey, hang on, yeah? You know, there are hundreds of millions of Muslims in India. How can you not address the position of Muslims in India and the position of Muslims in the subcontinent anyway, because after all we're covering South Asia and not just India. Yeah? So what about Pakistan? What about Bangladesh? What about other countries in the region? Yeah? And so I got together with Judge Pearl at that time, and he asked me to, basically I wrote that book. It was fun, it was hard work, and I know it has had enormous impact, and I'm under pressure to produce a revised version, an updated version, but I'm afraid time is running out. New people need to do that quite clearly. Yeah? So back to my suggestion that this is not just a private international law project, but also something that concerns public international law. This project is also about the balance between state law and non-state law. Because when you are engaged in your activities, you're promoting certain state law-based activities and solutions. And we forget as lawyers, and I am a lawyer too in that sense, we forget as lawyers that 80% of disputes never go to any court at all. And I would be pleased if I learned in due course that some of your cases have actually been resolved informally outside the court in some form as a result of your intervention. I'll give you an example in a moment. Yeah? So this rootedness, if you like, of the law in society is something that is very important. And the interdisciplinary nature of what we are doing here is terribly important. Because it's all about psychology, people who are angry with each other, who want vengeance, who are not interested in a solution, but they want to make life more difficult. Yeah? And if one can calm this down in some form, or if one, as an expert, can simply remind a particular individual that your line of argument is rubbish, you know, it doesn't work. Yeah? Or one can simply explain to the judge that, my lord, You need to be aware of a particular issue here. Otherwise, you're committing injustice. You're getting it wrong. And I've had very interesting scenarios where, a judge, I think, went home and thought and decided something the next day, which surprised a couple of people. But what happens, like in India, like elsewhere, many of those cases are not even reported. And so what we have is those gems of progress in legal solution of all sorts of issues are not known because they're simply in some file, in some document. Yeah? And unless you pick them up as academics, as writers, as people who produce other forms of expert report or whatever, we lose them. We lose that knowledge. So back to the point about the balance between state law and non-state law. So I've always been concerned about this statification of a thing. In German we say Verstaatlichung. Yeah? The Verstaatlichung also of Sharia, no? Very big topic. Yeah? What is Sharia? To what extent is it a state law? To what extent is it a divine law and all that? Yeah? Very, very important. And let me start in 1975, when I came to England in 72, but in 75 I met a Gujarati woman on the street at night. My wife knows all about this, most of it. So I met her on the street. She was sitting there crying and, desperate. And I said, "What's wrong?" "Well, my husband threw me out. We had our first night. He didn't like it. And he threw me out." And the background fact was that they had no registered marriage. They only had a Hindu marriage in 75 in Leicester. Yeah? And she was a Patel girl, so a major community in Leicester and the Gujarati community. These people were shocked about what happened, obviously, and advised their community as a result in future to actually first please register your marriage and then you do whatever you want to do. But first please pin him down, register the marriage. This is what in Britain has happened largely, that people have learned to register their marriages and they've done it first and often, in a lunch break. Yeah, it's just, just go and register, it's a little thing. And then people waited for months and months till the right time came to do the actual Hindu wedding or whatever. And in the 70s, we see in English family law a number of cases called Singh and Singh, Kaur and Singh, yeah? And these cases are all nullity cases. And they're all arising at a point where, in the development of English family law, where a couple has been married officially, but something has gone wrong along the way before the actual Hindu or Sikh or Muslim marriage. And those cases have gone somehow. They're no longer, as far as I know, arising in the country. But other cases have come up. But in 75, this poor girl, of course, had no remedy whatsoever. Nobody, gave her any help. And my response was in 1996, when we did the Muslim law book here, to create this concept of Angrezi Sharia, that focusing on Muslims here, the observation was basically, look, these migrants have brought, as Anil already said, the personal law with them to this country, as they've brought it to Kenya, to Uganda, to America, to everywhere. Yeah? And they basically then pursue family law matters or family matters as they are used to in the other jurisdiction, oblivious of the state law, or sometimes very well aware of the state law but not willing to follow it. Now, my colleague, anthropologist Roger Ballard, talked about Desh Pradesh. People live at home abroad. Yeah? They reconstruct their presence in diaspora on their own terms. And I think we haven't got very far yet in Britain, specifically, to understand how that actually works, because it is still an issue. I know you've worked on this a lot, no? That many Muslim women in particular are not registering their marriages. And only last week I spoke to an old friend who has also been in Leicester for 50 years. And she tells me of cases right now, where, yeah, of course you see, yeah, where Muslim women are not registering their marriage because, after all, God is the witness. Why do I need the state? Yeah? And so this is all very complex. In some of the cases you will see, but many of those cases you will not see, because people are wise enough to make their own arrangements if anything happens. And Anil, you raised this already in India also. Of course, the concept of divorce by mutual consent is well known, is well practiced. Yeah? But the trouble is, in the Hindu Marriage Act, there is section 13 with these huge numbers of causes for divorce. But hidden away in the Act, in section 29 at the end, is this other section which everybody overlooks all the time, because all along present has been the provision for mutual consent divorces. Yeah? And that balance, if you like, between the formal, court-based decisions and the private arrangement of arranging a divorce is simply underplayed in so many ways. No? So looking at all of this, because I was not a trained lawyer, but I had to teach English family law in particular, and through English family law I discovered all those cases I told you about already, because my students were absolutely amazed and wanted to study more. My colleagues were absolutely appalled. Yeah? This is not something we should study in a law school. This is anthropology. Yeah? This is not something we want to know about. And I said, look, and my neighbor here, my colleague here has said already, we need to stay on course, even if people say all sorts of negative things, just carry on. I carried on and did those things. I don't know what will happen now that I've retired, because the people that are doing my work now are all human rights lawyers, and they have completely different agenda. None of them is here. And you can see that I am a little concerned that in England, academic coverage of this field of law is declining, is not developing in the way it should. There is a lot of scope for development. So I began to work as a comparative lawyer and showed that, of course, we don't agree about the definition of law anyway. But if we always have state law and non-state law, but we also have always values attached to these laws, whether they are state law and non-state law. So by 2006, I had a textbook, another Blue Bible, on comparative law, which has the triangle in it. A triangle of law with state law, non-state law values. But that, over time, we modified, because my students were always saying, PM, Professor Wensky is PM, yeah? So there's something missing. And what was missing was human rights, international law. And then I discovered, because I had devised this model after discussions with a Japanese scholar, Professor Chiba, who's now deceased, who had taught about the connectedness of values and different types of law, I discovered that he was forced in the 70s not to mention the fact that there was actually also a conflict within those values, namely traditional values and modern values. And so what happened in our discussions, and now we worked with computers in the early 2000s, so I began to learn, hey, we need to be a little more elaborate on this. So I created a structure that is now a kite, a structure with 4 corners. So there are traditional values, there's state law, there's non-state law, but there's also human rights and international law. And so we are flying kites now. Yeah, and we have to find all the time as lawyers the right balance between the competing expectations that come from these 4 corners. But the 4 corners are not actually just corners, they're actually again another mini kite in every corner. Because when you are a state lawyer, you have to be aware of all the other three. Yeah? When you are society, you have to be aware of the state law, you have to be aware of human rights, you have to be aware of religion, and so on and so on. Can you see? So I'm now analyzing these sorts of complexities always in terms of the kite structure, and combine in that way theory and practice. And let me give you an example. I was involved in the divorce of Mick Jagger and Jerry Hall. And they were in court in a very prominent place. Everybody wanted to know what's going on. They married on a beach in Bali, and Jerry was saying that she was a Hindu and they had a Hindu wedding. They slaughtered some chicken and drank some spirit, yeah, and followed local customary law. All well and good. You follow custom, you get married, keep talking. But, yeah, my expert report found that, hey, are these two people actually members of the local community on this beach that can actually be counted as members of a community that is allowed to take the benefit of this particular kind of custom? And of course that's not the case. And so Jerry realized, okay, I'm getting nowhere. And they settled the case outside court, and they simply decided that the millions that she claimed from him should be given to their children. And it's quite remarkable. But if you analyze this in terms of the kite, you realize what is happening here. Yeah? So this is the family arrangement that Professor Durrett talked about all the time. Yeah? The informal arrangement within the social structure, where yes, there are inequalities, there are all sorts of issues, but there is justice, equity, and good conscience. JGEC is such an important concept, not just in Indian law, but everywhere. No? And again, this is risking to be lost because it's not promoted well enough. Also in Indian law schools, I'm very critical of Indian law schools. They're far too positivistic, far too black letter. Yeah, and it's good that you have some Indian partners, but you need more. You need to have more impact on these things. So, because people now, as I said, marry several times in this country and elsewhere, we get very interesting cases now where our judges are faced with scenarios where a husband, for example, says, I want a divorce, but I don't really want to pay the dowry. Yeah? So let me briefly give you this case. It's a middle-class Bengali family here, two professionals in the city, mid-30s. They marry, after some weeks they fall out, and you know, talak, 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 get lost. She throws him out, or he throws her out. He goes to court and wants an English divorce. My lord, you're an English judge, you should apply English law. Yeah, I've given her my talak, that's it. But now you do the English bit, because they had a Muslim marriage and an English marriage. Now I want my English divorce. Yeah, but she counter-argued, but I want my dower. He's promised me 30,001 pound of mahr, of dower, if he throws me out. And he said to the judge, no, you know, this is England, yeah? You give me my divorce, I'm entitled to a divorce. And I said, no. I said to the judge, listen, if you agree with the husband, she will go to a Sharia council tomorrow and get her 30,001 pound. Is that so, he said. And then he started making some notes, and next morning he decided the case. I wasn't in court, but he decided, and he gave the woman 30,000 pounds. Not 30,001. So what is happening here? It's funny, but it's very serious. Yeah? It is evidence that in 2000, English law had reached a stage where it was still unwilling to recognize a Muslim contract as part of English law, but under equity, it was willing to grant the wife her money. She wouldn't complain about the £1, but justice was done. Yeah? That, I believe, has since changed. Yeah? the courts have recognized things a bit more, no? And so I think it is immensely complex what you're engaged in, no? And it's challenging, definitely. Yesterday I was in the House of Lords when you launched your book, or Ankit's book rather, yeah? And it was fascinating to talk to listen to Lady Arden, who emphasized that in all this messiness and all this confusion that exists in this field, we should remain hopeful and positive. There is progress, gradually, slowly, sometimes there's setbacks, okay, yeah? But it is, evident that we are moving in the right direction to some extent, no? But it is all the time necessary to combine theory and practice and listen to the people, if you like, quite clearly, no? And we've talked about this, there are lots of noises, lots of politics, and these politics very often prevent us from clear thinking about finding these solutions, because things get politicized. I could go on forever, but about the maintenance law you mentioned is one of the big issues in India. And the Shabanu case, many of you know, yeah? But the politics of that particular case are so confused and confusing, and there is such unwillingness to accept what actually has been decided subsequent to the Shabanu case. And journalists are morphing judgments. I mean, they are telling us things that the judges never said. Yeah? So you need to guard yourself when you are dealing with these kinds of cases against these sorts of noises, which are also irritants that cloud the mind, if you like, quite clearly. So you need to skillfully balance your kite all the time, I think. And one last point I want to make is that I've said already in England, but elsewhere too, we are at the risk of not picking up the new scenarios that we have in our multicultural societies. Lord Rana, you have said when you came 60 years ago, England was very different. When I came 50 years ago, Leicester was very different. Leicester now is 50% Asian. Yeah? You walk in the city center and you think you're in Bangladesh or somewhere in Africa. Yeah? Or in some parts it's like Pakistan. Yeah? And of course the Golden Mile is glorious India. You can get everything. Yeah? But Britain and other countries in Europe are not prepared for the reality of analyzing and scrutinizing and interrogating this diversity and plurality and building out of that legal structures that actually help people to live together peacefully, to antagonize everything and to create problems. You've heard of the riots in Leicester. They have entirely different reasons. Yeah? There's an inquiry going on about this and all that. But we shouldn't be distracted by these politics. What you are doing here is an absolutely important and brilliant job. And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
I need to stand again. Dr. Mensky says he's retired. I don't think so.
No, we're not letting
Dr. Mensky also talked of kite flying. I must tell Dr. Mensky that I, Nazia, and so many of his students are his kites.
Yes.
And he still holds our bowstrings. Today, listening to him, I went back to my lecture room in SOAS, because that is how he taught. Now let's do a rundown. German by nationality, Sanskrit scholar, no law degree, teaching law, and an expert in Muslim law more than Hindu law.
Yeah.
Where can you find a man? I have seen and married to a Marathi lady from Gujarat with two children, Hans and Varun, whom I grew up with. His son, one of his sons is married to Japanese lady. What more can you know about multiculturalism, about diversity? than Dr. Mensky. I wish we could replicate copies of Dr. Mensky and have them all over the world. I wish to share one other thing. Yesterday, Dr. Mensky did mention it twice. Yesterday, you did a different look at international law. We talked of reimagining the international legal order, which is a book which my son edited and which Lady Arden and all honorable guests discussed yesterday. So that book is an effort of my son to see where is international legal order going. And one of the chapters that I and William Longman have authored is on the future of international family law. So a book which has been gifted to Mr. Gopal Subramanian, I am not supposed to touch it as I've been born, is what Mr. Gopal Subramanian will stand up and share with you just to look at. Because this book is a personal copy gifted to Mr. Gopal Subramanian. And with that, thank you, sir. It goes back in your bag. Otherwise, I will be in trouble. Now, with this, I will now ask Dr. Yoanga Amar Sikhan from the University of Oxford and international lawyers to please kindly share her views.
May I just say one thing? I just need you to ask
You need to give an introduction to her.
I need to also ask the parliamentarians amongst us, because your time is so precious. You have division bells ringing. So it would be remiss of me not to ask you, if you're pressed for time, just give me 1 minute, Doctor. Just to say, Baroness Uddin, thank you so much for coming. I would love to hear a few words from the House of Lords about how you see this structure, and then please, Afzal Khan MP from the House of Commons, if you could just give us 2 minutes of your time each just to explain why are you here, why do you welcome the initiative, if at all. Baroness Uddin first, maybe ladies first, yes? And then we'll follow a presentation, which you'll be happy to know is not just speaking, but on the screen, which I invite the good doctor from Oxford University, if you want to practice on anything or be ready, please be on standby. Baroness Uddin, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anna. Your
This is
Excellencies,
the microphone.
distinguished, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. There you go. Lord Rana, distinguished and eminent panel members and guests. Why I'm here, very simple. Anna Khan has called me. I know Anna for best part of, I think 30 years at least, minimum. And I know what an outstanding lawyer she is, but what an outstanding human being she is. And I think what Abal is trying to do is precisely that. You know, it's flying the kite of combining her passion, but also passion, you know, lawyers who are passionate about giving justice and freedom. I was just thinking when Lord Rana very profoundly discussing the conflicts in Northern Ireland, and I just thought one thing, like one's liberation is another's defiance. That's how I always see the context of, you know, difficulties with marriage. I'm a professional social worker by trade, tons and tons of cases of negotiating, 1,000 painful experiences, and always running to people like Anna to rescue the final peace or flight as wherever the cases went. There's so many things that has been going across my mind that I would want to say, but I'm going to hold myself, which is a rare privilege to oneself. One cannot ever stop one's brain going absolutely like, you know, flying. This has been such an incredible privilege and learning experience to hear so much from such eminent, you know, people who have contributed so much to a peaceful society. I'm an activist for women. On behalf of women, I advocate. And I think that that's where so much has fallen, you know, a sort of injustice has fallen on so many women, simply because they're not capable of, or they're not, you know, kind of held to be capable of the person that every man, every woman, every human being should. And so I think that it is incumbent upon us when across the border, a human being faces difficulties. I think that the ambition to right wrong is so profound. So I just want to say I wish you best of journey, and I'm here and I will always be with you, wherever you are, whatever you do, because I think you do them for all the right reasons. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Can you just give a brief introduction of Dr. Yala?
Afsal from the House of Commons has to have equal time. So, it's politics.
I'll try to less time.
No.
I will rest my case in the audience.
I think the doctor is ready and primed with the technology working, and Afsal Khan MP, please give us a few words on why you think you might not even need a microphone to do this, because at your height you can project. Please tell us why you're here.
Well, first of all, may I say thank you very much for giving me the honour to say a few words. I'm Afzal Khan, a Member of Parliament from Manchester, Gorton, all the way here. But I'm also a Shadow Justice Minister, so one of my responsibilities lies in this area. And of course, I am a solicitor. And I did do a little bit of the family law, but a long time ago. I was delighted to learn of this event and the people that you've gathered here. And I want to thank you, Aina. Thank you to you too. It was interesting actually listening, and I've been fascinated about what I've been hearing here with amazing and distinguished guests, Lord Justice Thorpe and his eloquent short speech, but powerful. And equally, it was amazing actually learning about not only about diversity, but your contribution in different walks of life, and particularly the development of the family law as well. For me, in a couple of minutes, a simple point is this. I just believe that we're lucky to be born in this day and age. And I say this because the whole world has opened up to us. The means we have to travel, the means that we have to communicate with one another has never been better than what we have. And that, in a way, opens up this idea that you advanced, that we need to be linked up. And for us to actually use expertise. And that idea ultimately is straightforward again to me, that there's no monopoly of knowledge of any particular area. This knowledge, the civilization idea is there for all of us to learn from. And when you can look back, it tells you again that we all have contributed into the civilization that we find ourselves in now. So we built on one another, we shared one another. And because we have such an amazing ability now to connect all this up, that's why I'm excited actually for what you're doing. So I don't take any more of the time, but I think it's a great idea. What was music to my ears as a Shadow Justice Minister was what I was told, that fundamentally this idea of yours is cheap and pro bono. And I thought the justice system where it is today in Britain, we could do with more of this. So thank you very much.
I'll do a quick introduction so you all know the context. So we'll be looking at the screen. I've been working with Professor Olivia Holden of Oxford University, now of the Sorbonne, post-Brexit, on a project where we're bringing together, it was called Euro Expert, but now it's more global, with Colperitus. I hope I'm saying this, yes, I'm saying it correctly. Where we're trying to harness expert reports globally. Neil's not here, but he produces expert reports. Werner, we used to produce hundreds of them, I produce them, and we're all working separately. And I really would like to use the power of technology now to say we're at the cusp of a brave new world, where Olivia Holden has agreed that we need to bring together all those global reports in a modern day Alexandria library, I would say online, which we can all access, and we can benefit pro bono, low cost, legal aid, and upwards, depending on what your position is in life, you should still have access to justice. So this is very dear to my heart, and I hope you'll explain how you'll distill the essence of this with artificial intelligence in the future. Thank you.
I don't feel pressure at all after such a distinguished panel of speakers. Actually, I'm here representing Professor Olivia Holden. She's the main initiator and the main project leader, and unfortunately she couldn't join us today. And I'm representing her. And I also like
Would
to.
you like to use the microphone? I don't know if
Sorry,
this
can
one's
you
on.
hear me?
Is it on?
Hello? Hello? Let me see for a second.
Pull it out. Yes. Hopefully there's a button there you can turn on. Otherwise I'll have to ask you to speak very loudly.
Hello?
No? You know, test it out. Anyone who's an expert in the mics?
I'm not saying I'm an expert.
Please. So if you could
Press the
help us.
button, but
It's not connecting? If not, it's a fairly quiet room there, a rapt audience. Maybe just towards the back of the room would be wonderful.
can maybe I can just grab this microphone?
Yes, or a bit heavy, but please help yourself.
Hello.
Ah,
Better. So I would also like to mention that Professor Olivia Holden, Holden's métis is Professor Velnevetsky, and she says hello to everyone on the panel as well. So I'm going to talk about cultural expertise in the project that we had at University of Oxford, which Professor Olivia Holden initiated and led. But it had to move, due to Brexit, it had to move to Sorbonne. And now it's based in Sorbonne, and now it has grown into a company. Sorry. So basically, cultural expertise is an innovative theoretical framework initiated by Professor Holden, and now at Panthéon Sorbonne, and endorsed by the scientific community to incorporate diversity into the administration of justice. This initiative addresses the issue of hyper-specialization of justice and its limited ability to accommodate diversity present in today's societies. I think that's what we talked about up until now. And here, the three sort of outputs of our project at Oxford is Culttext, it's a database, KX is a database of experts, and Culperitus is a community interest company that is trying to bring the project output to the market. So together, all three offer diverse platforms, as I mentioned, services, and it aims to revolutionize the legal industry by providing a multilingual, cross-jurisdictional database on cultural expertise, expert reports, and customized training. So basically, I don't have too many slides, so it's just three. First of all, it's the Culttext. It's very academic in nature, but now it's a work in progress. If you want to test it, you can go to this website. And it's currently at a very non-user-friendly stage. Hopefully we will improve it. Right now it's covering 16 countries because we have data collected on 16 countries, and we hope to expand to 60 countries in 3 years, and maybe the entire world in about 6 years, depending on funding that we get. So this database is, I'm not gonna go through all of it because you can all read. This is very academic, and probably what would interest you more is the next one, which is KX. It's a database with all the experts that are interested in writing expert reports or providing expertise in certain countries, certain issues. It's an open source database, and anyone can register, and anyone can search up. It's also a work in progress, so, but you can still use it. It's going to be free, and depending on the funding, we will try to expand it, obviously. But this is the most practical sort of outcome of our project, and we discussed it also with the lawyers here previously that we also provide training on both database, how to use it. It's actually very user-friendly. It will be, not now, but we provide training on cultural expertise and how to use it in courts and legal proceedings. We do it in Oxford as well. If, for example, your firm, your organization wants to have a training, we can do it ad hoc, we can do it tailored, either Oxford, Cambridge, or anywhere you like. You can do it at your firm. So basically, that's the second outcome of the project at Oxford. And Culperitas is the commercial arm, although it's a community interest company. We consider it a commercial arm, sort of a jumping phase into the business world, so to speak. So what we do is that we do training. Right now we have contracts with these institutions. And then we're also developing legal tech together with Intel Corporation. We're trying to build a model that will create a so that will create a registry of all the jurisdictions. And also it will expand both of the databases. It will be very user-friendly and it will be very fast. So, and then obviously the next stage would be launching it, upscaling, and looking for investment to expand it even more. Obviously it's in a developing stage, so we welcome your input. Please go to the website and test it, and it's very much work in progress. So that's pretty much it. The main three outputs.
You can do the thanks bit.
Thank you. It's available. Hello. So I think we'd like to thank the doctor for coming from Oxford University for this, and we welcome you back either to my club here or to any of our firms that want to invite you. But I think the next thing we need to do is ask Lydia, when she is back in the UK, come along please and speak to us about practical applications, because I think all of us are very keen to test it for you. We'll be guinea pigs. We'll certainly be very welcoming of it as academics, practitioners and judges, and we can get lots of people in the room. So thank you very much. Now, big round of applause for harnessing law and technology. Now I'd like to throw the floor open just to a few questions, if you have any, and then we're about to have a vote of thanks from Anil Malhotra. Are there any questions, or have you had too much knowledge bombarded at once? Are you comatose from the circuit? Anita, my good friend.
My question really is, it's been wonderful to listen to all these really fantastic, eminent speakers today, but it strikes me in our modern day that we need more women, basically, into law. And I've often said, Anna, you have to use your platform with your OBE, you have to use it so that the next generation and the generation after that, so that we do have real diversity. It won't happen on its own, and we cannot be silent. So that's what I want to say. I don't know what guys think about that, but that's certainly my view.
To have male sponsors is what we want. It's not just women helping women, but wonderful male sponsors who encourage us. And with that, my husband needs a vote of thanks, because he makes me do things in mind. He doesn't want to wait. He worked very hard to help us all be in this room, because it is the men behind us who help us have the confidence to keep going when we're tired. Thank you.
I second your thoughts, but I think we need more women Dr. Minskys,
Yes.
more women Lord Justice Thorpe,
Yes.
and more women Mr. Gopal, and more women, Lord Rana.
But Anil, you're getting them already. Livia is one of my students.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
people are coming up.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
The majority now are women actually
Yeah.
in law.
So Dr. Mensky has 3 kites in this room. Nazia, yourself, and me. And sir, if you step out on the roof, you will find kites all over the world. And you have the strings.
No. You hold the
And,
strings.
and on that note, I take you back to SOAS and back to a pupil who is still in the cradle, Anil Malhotra, to deliver the vote of thanks.
I think Usha wants to say one thing. We're very honoured to have so many very special people here. So Anita, Family Business Space, thank you very much for making a very important point. Usha Sood, who's one of the pioneers for us of justice.
I just wanted to say very quickly, don't be fooled, because when I was a student at Nottingham in the 60s, I was the only minority student all through my degree. And then I was the first woman barrister in Nottingham. So those were days when you had this. But I've taught at Trent in Nottingham for 37 years, and we had equal proportions of women and men in each class, in each cohort. Don't worry, women are there.
Thank you very much. And I would like the international lawyers please to have the floor for a minute. They've flown in from as far away as Singapore, Berlin, Karachi. Some of the people who the ABLE committee are here. So I want to thank them by just asking you to say a few words about why did you fly so far?
Thanks, Aina. When Aina invites you, you can't say no. Because we've only ever met prior to December 31st last year over LinkedIn. And it was just a coincidence because she messaged me and said that I just had a look at your LinkedIn and it's a mirror image of me. And okay. And I think that started everything. And so we connected over Zoom many times together with the rest of ABLE. And through those connections, I think we became friends. It's so nice to see Aina and company in person now. And I think the way I see ABLE growing is that it's not just about building legal connections, but really being friends. Because I think that's what the whole world can do more with.
Hello everybody, my name is Şeniz Mısırlıoğlu. I'm originally from Turkey, but I flew in from Berlin because I grew up in Germany. And I'm a duly licensed attorney in Germany and in the US, so I know both systems. And Dr. Mensky, I'm not practicing family law, but we met personally, first on LinkedIn and then personally in Berlin back before the pandemic. And later on, that idea came up with ABLE. And obviously I'm already through because of my background. I'm like Europe, Asia, and the United States, so what else? So it's a little bit similar as Dr. Mensky. But not being a family practitioner, I'm a little bit like, scared, because, the Turkish minority in Germany, have you ever had that question come up with the Turkish in Germany? Because I'm thinking, to get into a foreign country, you need to, because I do immigration, all these problems you disclose, those are the people already born here. I mean, they didn't come from India here, so I'm like afraid, because this question that never comes up in Germany. I mean, I studied, I spent my whole life, half of my life studying, and I've never faced, this problems. Did you? I mean, because, we're both Germans, so I'm a little bit afraid. I'm scared, and I have to tell you, law activists, there was this one lady, that's why I never got into family law, really, because she got stabbed. I mean, there's she survived, and she's now into politics, but my family always said, never go into family law, you don't have a Muslim background. So I'm like a little bit excited because I'm thinking about, what does that mean? It's Sharia law, what is that? Turkish minority? Well, I mean, what about all these women? Does this really go on in my country, Germany? So, I mean, that's it, forget about it. I'm not trying to be emotional, but I'm emotional because I'm seeing you now. And I wanted to ask him that in person, under 4 eyes, and I want to bore you, you know, that.
I can tell you now, there's
yes,
a lot going on in
well,
Germany.
actually, he's from Berlin. That's all I want to say.
Just for 1 minute, Emma, just before, because we need to be seated at another
Yes,
table.
hello everybody. I'm Ahmed from Prachi. Okay, my main purpose for coming with Bell to join this group and for international networking of the Association for Lawyers.
Thank you very much for coming to us. Thank you. Hopefully, all the others can join us. There have been many reasons why everyone couldn't be here, but it's a start, and we're going to get together more.
We will be doing webinars.
Yeah,
connected with all of you.
Absolutely. Monthly webinars and then in person. Ankit, over to you.
I will be very short because dinner awaits us. Drink and dinner are much more pleasing to some, perhaps to all. My understanding of family law is nascent, but my readings of history are much more interesting to me and also longer, and they hit solely down to my mother being an MPhil in Indian history. I am born with genes embedded in the study of history, of Indian history. Therefore, to talk about this room and the club is perhaps more fitting for me. This place is famous and also very important for us Asians. This is an alliance predominantly for Asians. In this very room and in this club, Dadabhai Naoroji was the first Asian parliamentarian to win an election in England. He was introduced to this club and others, which is Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founding father of Pakistan. Both of their portraits are outside. My guru, my boss, my mentor, Subhal Subramanian, quoted Baroness Hale as well. I'd like to share that Baroness Hale's portrait is right over there. And it was in this very room, a proud son presented his father's 9th book, and Baroness Hale in front of an August gathering just like this, called my father's allegiance work over the past 4 decades as family law in India. For a lady like Baroness Hale to do so speaks volumes of the work that has been conducted in my father's chambers with the long-standing support of Sir Matthew Thorpe, Professor Werner Mensky, and perhaps most importantly by Lord Diljit Rana, who is a godfather to not only me, but also to the family. Women are equally important in society and are the torchbearers of movements leading universities, colleges, and also society at large to change. It is therefore in Baroness Hale's coat of arms that she acknowledges this very notion when she says women are equal. With those words, I thank everyone else for being here and for blessing this allegiance. I am thankful to everyone. Thank you.
On that note, thank you very much for coming. Safe journeys home. And I'd like to thank Anil Malhotra for the initiative to launch the India Desk at a very opportune moment in history.
Let us not back German backs.
All right, not in public.
But
we look forward to working together.
Rahul and Simi do that.
Thank you very much, everybody. Wish us all the best with this new venture.